All right, preparing to live stream the webinar. All right, we are live on YouTube. Let me make sure I am recording on my computer as well so that we have a recording to send to you guys after the webinar is done. And then we can get started. Share my screen. Oh, getting a little ahead of ourselves over here. Pull up my notes so that we are ready to go and hit record. So welcome everyone to this webinar about how university admissions teams can increase enrollment using chatbots. It should be chatbots, be grammatically correct, but using a chatbot. This is a webinar that we actually planned after looking at some of our case studies, which you'll see later on in the webinar as well, which I think makes this webinar a little more exciting, because usually we talk about cool use cases that we generally see in the world of chatbots amongst our customers, which is cool. But when you have a specific case study in mind, when you have a specific use case and specific customers in mind who've actually seen value out of chatbots in a specific way, and then you translate that into a webinar, I find that it makes for a better piece of content because it's backed up by real tangible experiences that you can look at for reference as you try to implement something similar in your workflows. So we'll get into what the specific case studies are. We'll particularly go deep into one of them and actually show you a demo of what it looks like in its live deployment later on in the webinar. But starting with this webinar, as always, we like to begin our webinars with intros, just so that you know who we are, giving you information on this webinar, just so that you know where our information is coming from. Now, originally, this was supposed to be a webinar where I was just hosting, but Levi and I were strategizing the slides, and we figured, why not bring Levi on as well? Common occurrence in these webinars where we decide to bring people on, but I think it's all the better, the more the merrier, as the saying goes. So I'm Arnav. I am the general host on these webinars. Actually, Levi is too. But I'm a content marketer over here at TARS. And essentially what that means is I create content like this webinar to help you get the most out of your marketing and customer service stacks using chatbots. And we'll get into what that means in a couple of slides, because we're really going to be touching on both of those use cases in this webinar because they are linked to each other. And I'm privileged today to be joined by Levi, who is a chatbot specialist on the team. Hi, Levi.
Hi, yeah, Levi, and I've been working with chatbots for over 4 years. And as the saying goes, I fell in love with chatbots at the DMV, as we like to point out all the time. Yep. And since then, I've been working all over the place, whether it's enterprise level deployments or mid-market SMBs as well, but also had my fair share of conversations with universities on this very topic. And yeah, excited to share some knowledge from that and get going.
Yep. As a company as a whole, we've been around since 2016. Our name is TARS, if you hadn't gathered from our landing page where you signed up. But we've been around since 2016, helping customer experience teams and marketing teams boost customer engagement using chatbots. Now, what that means sounds super vague, but essentially what that means, I mean, the way we put it in our last webinar, to give you some context about around why TARS was started. I mean, we started with a simple mission in mind. We wanted to improve the way businesses interacted with their customers, or for that matter, any organization interacts with their end stakeholder, be that a student or a customer, because we ourselves were going about the world. We were buying things online. We were signing up for courses. We were signing up for services online, and we found that the experiences that we were going through, especially on mobile, were terrible. And we wanted to do something about it. So we decided to look into the problem. And the solution, the best solution we could come up with that seemed to solve a lot of the problems that we were facing was conversations. So how could we facilitate conversations between businesses and their customers? Because that seemed to be the best means of interaction that actually provided a good customer experience to people. And the solution, the specific solution we came to, the specific solution we arrived at was chatbots. Now, at the time, we didn't really think of it as chatbots. We didn't think of ourselves as a chatbot company. Again, as I mentioned, our mission was just to improve the way organizations interact with their customers. And conversations were just a tool to achieve that. But then the chatbot industry sort of emerged around us. That's what everyone started calling it. So then we adopted the term ourselves, and we, lo and behold, overnight became a chatbot company. But the underlying mission still remains the same. You'll see through this webinar as well that our focus is squarely on improving the way organizations interact with their end stakeholders. There are a bunch of great side effects of that that you get. Side effects, maybe not the ideal term for it, but there are a bunch of benefits that you get from doing something like that, which is you obviously see a higher return on investment on your marketing campaigns. You see a more efficient customer service operation, things like that. But I mean, providing a good experience begets value for yourself. Now, this is a first for us today. We are actually co-sponsor. We have a co-sponsor for this webinar. This is actually the first time we've ever done this. Levi and I were talking about it before we jumped on, but I couldn't think of a better co-sponsor to have on this webinar. We've actually worked with them on webinars before. Leadsquare is co-sponsoring this webinar with us. If you don't know who Leadsquare is an enrollment accelerator for colleges, universities, and ed tech institutes. They help institutes of all sizes transform their admissions process through intelligent automation, activity tracking, multi-channel marketing, and a simple mobile CRM to drive admissions on the go. They've been awarded Deloitte's Fast 50 India for 6 years in a row, and they boast a customer base of over 1,000 businesses. In the education space, some of their notable customers are Stratford University, Asher College, Byju's, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the world's largest edtech company, Unacademy, NIIT, Vedantu, and Amity University, amongst others. Now, in simple layman's terms, honestly, I've taken a look at Leadsquare's platform before. We've done a webinar with them in the past, actually. If I can find a link to that, I'll drop it in the chat. But I've taken a look at their platform before, and I can see why they've been able to achieve so much in the education space, because the tools that they provide for especially down the funnel engagement of your students, which really comes after what we're talking about today, are extremely powerful, and they're surprisingly easy to use. I think people often mistake complexity for being more advanced in the technology space. People think that if a software is more complex, it's more advanced and helps you achieve more, but that's not the case. I think the softwares that really achieve the most and derive the most value for customers, for universities in this case, are the ones that can take complex and powerful processes and make them feel simple, and that's exactly what Leadsquare does, in my opinion. So do go check them out. We've left a link over here in the slides. You'll have access to these slides later, so if you're interested in seeing how you can streamline your down the funnel processes, be sure to, yep, there you go. One of my colleagues over here shared a webinar that Leadsquare is hosting soon in the chat. Be sure to check that out. But yeah, that's enough that's enough about our co-sponsor. In terms of what we are talking about today on the webinar, we've divided the webinar up into 4 parts. We are first going to talk a little bit about the problem that we are trying to solve with chatbots. So why are we on this webinar today? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? There's no sense in implementing a new technology into your existing marketing workflows, into your customer experience workflows, if it's not going to help in some way, if it's not addressing a problem, because at that point, you're just adding more hassle on your plate for no reason. In the second part of the webinar, we are going to talk about how chatbots solve the problem that we talked about in part 1. And then my favorite parts of the webinar, parts 3 and 4, we're actually going to show you what it looks like in action. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to go to a live deployment of a chatbot on a university's website, see how it works, see what it achieves. And then in the final section, we'll give you access to us, essentially, where you can ask us questions if you need anything clarified about what we're talking about in the webinar, so that you can get a complete picture of what we're trying to convey today. Now, that being said, if you do have questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A section or in the chat. If we can answer them on the go, we will do that while the webinar is happening. Audience engagement always makes the webinar a more delightful experience. So I highly encourage you to drop questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. And of course, quick logistical note, we are recording the webinar, so we will send you a recording after the webinar is done. Quick issue with the recording over here, just a second. Yeah, I mean, if you host a webinar and there's no technical issues, did the webinar really happen? I don't know. Anyways, let's get started. In the first section, we have to talk about what the problem we are solving is. And the problem that we are talking about today is the admissions CRO problem. Now, for the uninitiated, what CRO means is conversion rate optimization. And essentially what we are talking about when we use the term CRO is how you can optimize the top of your funnel. So where students click onto your ads, click onto your landing pages, and you want them to request more information, or you want them to start an application to your program. How can we get more people to actually complete that process and reach the next stage of the journey where you can nurture them into a complete application? That is what we are talking about today, because our calculus is if you can get more people through that first stage of the journey, which is actually surprisingly high friction, then you can get more people at the end of the funnel converting into applications and enrollments for your institution. And I think a good place to start talking about this problem is to look at what the prospective student's journey is when they are looking for a course and when they're looking for a course and they're eventually hopefully applying for it. Now, the first thing that a lot of students do is they click on an ad. That's how a lot of universities, how a lot of colleges, how a lot of educational institutes bring traffic to their pages. That's how a lot of educational institutes drive interest for their programs. They run ads, and then prospective students out there, they click on those ads and they land onto a page. Now, on the page, what happens? The student skims the information that's there on the page. I mean, as marketers, we like to think that students are reading every single word that we put on the page, every single image that we put on the page. We like to think that they're reading it from start to finish, but that's not true. Human beings, we like to do things quickly. We skim over the page. We try to glean as much information as we can. And then ideally, the next step in this journey is that we take some action to proceed the buyer journey forward, or proceed the application journey forward, the admissions journey forward. Now, what that looks like is, in an ideal world, obviously, we'd like the student to start an application. It happens sometimes, but I'd say that a very small fraction of people who land on pages like this actually go ahead and start an application after they skim through a page. The second outcome that we often see in the education space is that we try to get people to request more information. This is a very common CTA through ads. Student clicks on an ad, they skim through the information, and then you give them a form so that they can request more information about the program. And the beauty of requesting more information is there's a lot lower of a barrier to entry for requesting more information than starting an application, because all you need to do is share your email, and maybe the university or the college or the institute will send you a couple of emails after to nurture you to application, but you're not really committing to a university yet. I think it's a bigger jump to actually start an application, because that makes the whole process feel a lot more real. And then there are the outcomes that we obviously don't want. So the third possible outcome that we often see in the education space is that often students who have questions about the program before they're ready to request more information, before they're ready to start an application, what they do is they email an admissions counselor. So they have a question about, say, the curriculum, the tuition, the application timeline. What do they do? Instead of reading through the page and actually finding the information, they skim through it. They don't want to read anymore. They find the contact details of an admissions counselor, and then they email the admissions counselor, which is a huge problem that we'll get into in just a second. And then the fourth, probably the most common outcome, is that the student drops from the page. Conversion rates across industries are notoriously low, especially on ads. So essentially what that means is 95% of the people who you pay to bring to your landing pages drop from the page without converting, which is a huge problem, because that means 90 to 95% of your time, effort, and money is is going down the drain, is going to Google, is going to Facebook for free. Essentially, you're not getting anything in return for that money or that time or that effort that you invest into your ad campaigns. So the question that we need to ask ourselves today is, we want to avoid these last two outcomes over here. We want to minimize the number of people who email admissions counselors, because obviously your admissions counselors have a million other things to do. They might not be able to respond to people as quickly as they'd like, which slows down the admissions process, which makes these prospective students go cold and reduces the number of people that are actually converting. And we obviously want to reduce the number of people who are dropping from the page without converting, because again, that's wasted money. That's a reduced number of leads that you can follow up on and hopefully convert into real enrollments, real applications at the end of the funnel. And the question we need to ask ourselves to figure out how we solve this problem, how we prevent these outcomes from occurring, is why do these outcomes occur? Why are people emailing admissions counselors when there is information on your landing page? Why are people dropping from your page? And those are really the questions that we are trying to answer over here.
Yeah.
Now,
so
yep, go for it.
I'm going to jump in here and talk about this a little bit. So one of and this is really true across industries, right? This isn't an application issue for admissions particularly. It is across the industry. User uncertainty is an obstacle to conversion. What that really means is we always have questions, right? We always have questions about what we're getting ourselves into, even if it's as simple as giving our email out for requesting more information. We may have questions that will put a barrier between us giving that email out. So any of those moments will stop that prospective student at their highest intent, right? You have them on the page. You got them to click the ad. They're on the page. They're engaging with your marketing. They're at their highest intent. But anything at that moment, and this even includes, we're not really talking about it right now, but this even includes they get a Facebook message from their friend, right? These are all things pulling them away, taking them away from that conversion. But most important is that they are going to have questions. And if you cannot answer those questions, or you answer those questions and they don't actually see it, they're not engaging well enough, then they are not going to move forward with conversion. So this is really important when we're talking about the problem that surrounds this, is uncertainty. This can come in also many different forms, right? If it's as well, if the landing page doesn't feel very professional or feels spammy to people, that's also a barrier to it. They may have even more questions when they are having a hard time digesting the information. This is kind of what we talked about, right? They're always scanning through this information, missing key points, or just trying to pick up key information, but really not catching all the other subtle bits that you're trying to convey to them, which creates those questions. And most folks are going to go find that email. They're going to find the email, they're going to find the phone number if one exists, and they're going to use those channels because they're not going to read through all that website copy. Most internet users just aren't going to do it. So you either have to do one of two things. You either have to keep your copy incredibly minimal, but then again, you're not answering all those questions, or you put a lot of copy out there and folks are scanning through it. So you need to address this, you need a whole different way of approaching answering questions in the first place, because using your human resources, aka your admissions counselors, to answer tons of emails, to answer phone calls. And in fact, I've actually talked to department heads that have particular programs that are just like, I get so many emails, I cannot manage this, I can't ask my staff to manage it. What do we do to solve this problem? And it is a daily occurrence, right? And as our email inboxes load up and load up and load up, it becomes harder and harder to respond to those queries. And the longer we take, and I can't remember what the exact stat is, so I don't want to throw something out there that's crazy, but it's like after 5 minutes, your chance of converting that person drops like significantly. And as you time out to 30 minutes, it's insane the amount of percentage of chance of converting or getting that interested student, for example, to move forward is like, it's an ungodly number. It's crazy. So we have to be able to engage folks at the moment of their highest intent. It's incredibly important to driving up that conversion rate. And yeah, that's really what we're going to now transition to, is talking about how do we do that? How do we engage students at their highest intent? How do we move them, answer their questions, remove that uncertainty, and drive up the amount of applications we're getting?
And just really quick before we move forward, Levi, I think a point you touched on that not enough people talk about across industries really in the conversion rate optimization game is that a lot of this information that students are asking for over email or they can't find, so they drop, is available on the pages that you guys are creating. It's available on the pages that institutions are creating and putting out there through their ads. It's just that students don't have the patience to read them, or the patience or the attention span to read them. And I've been in that boat before. When I was applying for my master's program, I landed on specific pages. I wouldn't read through the page often, and I'd prefer to email someone, because who wants to go? It seems irrational now to think about in hindsight, but who wants to read through all of that text? And what we're really talking about is just making that information a lot more accessible, a lot more easy to digest. So that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Or one way to phrase it is, how do we address the admissions questions that students have without involving admissions stuff? So if the student has a question about tuition, if a student has a question about the application timeline, if they're an international student, they have a question about maybe the visa process. How do you address those repetitive queries that are clogging up your admissions counselors' inboxes or causing your drop rate from your landing pages to be high without actually involving any admission stuff? Because again, that's not scalable. If your admission stuff is dealing with these thousands, even if it's honestly, even if you're a small admissions team, even if you're getting dozens of queries like this on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis, it's hard to stay on top of them in addition to all of your other duties, because God knows you also have a million other things to deal with at once. So how do we address these admissions questions without involving any human beings, without involving any admission stuff? And the answer obviously is automation. This is a trend that's going on across industries. People, when they think of automation, they tend to think about it in the context of like an Amazon warehouse where a robot brings packages from one part of the warehouse to another, but it actually applies in the online world as well, as we're going to see in just a second. And specifically, the sort of automation that we are talking about today is chatbots. And what a chatbot is a automated customer service representative that can resolve queries that a prospect might have, capture lead information from a prospect. So all of those request more information forms that you have on your page, a chatbot can capture all of that same information over a chat. And in a lot of ways, it's more engaging than that form, because people prefer to have chat conversations than they do to fill out forms. No one really likes filling out forms. They're these bureaucratic messes that we associate with going to the DMV, for example. But they're not something that people, especially younger people, explicitly want to interact with. Whereas having a chat with someone or something in this case is something that people do with their friends and family on a daily basis. It's something we're used to doing, and it's a little more dynamic. It feels like there's someone on the other end actually taking out the time out of their day to have this conversation with you. Another great aspect about these about chatbots is that they can easily step people through processes. So we don't think about this often, but say that someone has a question about, say, the application timeline, what the timeline looks like after you apply, after you submit your application, what the deadline is, when they expect a response, how the entire process will go. Conveying that through a standalone landing page, a static landing page, is kind of hard. You need to either have a design team that can make a graphic to convey that for you, or you just need to put it on the page as text. And if there are conditions in the process where if situation A arises, then go in this direction, situation B will happen. If situation B happens, then situation C happens. If you have situations like that, it's very hard to convey through a static landing page. People aren't going to go through the effort of reading through that. They'll just email your admissions counselor and ask them to explain it to them in the exact same words, but it feels a little better when it's coming from an actual person. So chatbots are great at that, because they they flip the information hierarchy. Instead of presenting all of that information in a wordy landing page, what they do is they have a back and forth conversation where they ask the user for input. They say, oh, does this apply to you? If this applies to you, this is the information that you need, as opposed to presenting everything at the same time. Chatbots are also great at collecting feedback. This is a point I think, Levi, you have experienced firsthand building chatbots, which is that they're a great tool for collecting feedback from people that can help improve the chatbot again and make it even better for people who interact with it in the future, right?
Yeah, and actually, just to jump back one on the process, helping step people through processes as well. One important note to that, and you mentioned it earlier, but you may have international students, right? You may have veterans. You have all these different folks coming that are traditional, non-traditional, have different needs, and those are all conditional. They have conditions to them applying. Now, traditional landing pages and forms, they have the ability to branch to different outcomes, to different messaging, to handle their needs. But chatbots do, and that's really their superpower, is they're able to segment those users out, and then deliver like really personalized and very specific information that they will actually read. That's the key here, right? With landing page, with all that text, you're not reading it, but when it's in a chat message interface, people consume that much better. They comprehend it way higher, and so you have much better outcomes from that interface, from those interactions. And then on the note of feedback, yeah, I've seen amazing things happen from just asking for a rating and some detailed feedback. It literally creates a feedback loop that is improving your process and doing it through user engagement. Most people pay research groups to do this. You can just do it in your daily workflows using chatbots. So it's definitely another superpower that they have.
Yeah, we actually did an interview with someone who works in the chatbot space, a pretty senior guy in the chatbot space. And he pointed out that errors are actually a chatbot superpower, because if someone lands on your landing page and they can't find something, or they face an issue, they don't have a way of telling you that issue exists. They're not going to go through the effort of finding your feedback form on your page, buried away at the bottom, filling it out and sending it to you. They're just going to close the page. Whereas in a chatbot, the chatbot can ask you right there in the conversation while they have you, and actually get that feedback, which you can use to fix the chatbot or optimize it for the future. Which is something that a lot of people don't talk about. In a landing page, what you're going to be looking at is click maps and screen recordings at best. And then you have to guess the issues that the user is going through. Now, the final point over here on this page that I really want to cover is that they automate your backend workflows as well. I mean, we often think about pieces of software that are front-facing, that interact with end prospects and students only in the context of how they interact with those students. But a key point to note over here is that because a chatbot is a piece of software, it can link up with your CRM instantly. You just have to set up the integration once, and every single conversation that chatbot has with the prospective student gets synced with that prospective student's file in your CRM, which is something that a human conversation can't do. I mean, when your admissions counselors are having conversations with people over email, they don't have the time to sync all of that information with your CRM. Or if they do have to invest the time in doing that, that's time taken away from other tasks that they could be doing during the day, and that kills productivity, it kills efficiency, and it kills your admissions team's ability to convert more people at the top of the funnel and eventually convert them into enrollments further down. And we already covered a lot of this on the previous slide. We got a little ahead of ourselves, but the reason chatbots are a better option in a lot of ways is because, I mean, to distill it down to one line, like we have over here, chatbots offer a mobile-first conversational experience that prospective students want. And what I mean by that is they're taking the same information that your landing pages are presenting, but they are packaging it in a conversational experience that your prospects prefer to have. So when your prospect leaves your landing page to start an email chain with your admissions counselor, the admissions counselor is sharing the same information that exists on your landing page, but they're doing it in a conversational format where the student feels like someone is talking to them. a chatbot does that, but on your page. They don't have to leave the page and start an email thread where an admissions counselor gets involved. The chatbot just has the conversation on the page while they're still there, while they're still interested. But at the same time, they do this without the hassle of any human involvement. So since it's a piece of software, it's cheap. You just need one chatbot to interact with everyone at once, to answer all of your queries at once. They're instant. This is something that we didn't talk about, but when people start an email thread with your admissions counselor might not be able to respond to that email for a couple of hours. A chatbot, on the other hand, being a piece of software, being available 24/7, like we have in the third point over here, can respond to people instantly. And that's a really real underrated benefit of chatbots. It sort of addresses the question when the user has it, when the student has it, as opposed to a few hours down the line when the prospective students may be thinking about something else and they don't really have the mental space to think about the search that they did a couple of hours earlier. And this point about infinite concurrence, again, touched upon it, but a single chatbot can have a conversation with millions of people at once. So there's no question of having a wait time if you do have a live chat system in place, or even email, because you can only really type out one email at a time. You can't respond to multiple people in the same breath, essentially, but a chatbot can achieve that. And really quickly, you can see some.
Yeah. Just to add a couple things back on that slide. Can we jump back real quick? Yep. Some key things between mobile first conversational experiences. I like to say this because it really puts perspective to using text interfaces, using chat interfaces. 6 billion active users every month on all the messaging apps in the world. So basically the world uses text messaging. There is not a more ubiquitous interface that exists. It is text messaging. Chat interface is the king of communication, so to speak. So that is a key metric. And really, when if we're targeting especially traditional students, guess what? They're on their phone. They're on their phone constantly. And if you deliver them up, even a mobilely optimized landing page, it still isn't that great on mobile. Sure, it's squished down and it fits on the screen. They don't have to pinch to zoom, but it's still not what they're looking for. It's not what they're used to, and it's not going to deliver the results you want. That's why the conversion rates on landing pages, whether they're mobile optimized or not, are not that good. Versus text messaging, they know how to use that. They immediately understand what's going on, and it makes sense to them, and it's easier for them to consume and move forward, and it's relevant to them. And additionally, right, when we talked about instantaneous answers, instantaneous engagement, again, I just want to point out that highest intent, when their intent is highest, you need to interact with them. So if that email goes 5 minutes or longer being unanswered, they're already off to other schools, applying to them, checking out their programs. And honestly, the first one that answers the quickest may be the one they end up going with. So there's a lot to be said about being able to instantly engage those prospects.
Right. I mean, a way to think about it is that when they're on your page, they're thinking about your institution right then and there. If you email them an hour later, they might be scrolling through Instagram, they might be scrolling through Reddit, they might be doing the dishes. Their mind really isn't focused on your institution. So why give them an answer? Give them the answer when they're not really thinking about you, when you could give them the answer when they are actively thinking about your institution. So again, this is some more general pointers about automating conversations. I think they apply really to any industry over here, but essentially, we covered a lot of what we spoke about in the previous slide. But you can engage your students when their intent is highest, deliver relevant messaging. Again, this gets back to the branching point that Levi was talking about, where you can deliver messages, you can deliver information that is specific to the conditions of each student, as opposed to having a one-size-fits-all page that presents information for everyone. And you can automate the repetitive queries that your admissions counselors are tired of addressing over email through chat, and in the process, make the entire process of submitting an application a lot easier for students, which in turn makes them more likely to fill those applications. Now, this is an actual case study. The case study that I was talking about at the beginning feels like forever ago, but this is an actual case study of an actual university that used chatbots in the way that we were talking about to achieve some of the outcomes that we were talking about as well. So Levi over here, not the same Levi that is not the same Levi that is on this webinar today. He's the director of marketing and communications at the UCI, University of California, Irvine, Paul Mirage School of Business. And he and his team use chatbots on some of their master's programs website, which we'll see what they look like in just a second over here, to address questions that their admissions counselors were getting over email. And essentially what they were able to achieve is to automate away those repetitive queries about application timelines, tuition, curriculum, questions specific to international students that would have otherwise come through email right on the page when the students were there, which again freed up time for the admissions counselors at the business school. And it also made the experience easier for students because they were getting the responses to their questions easily and quickly on the page without having to wait for a couple of hours. And I think we don't have the statistic over here in this particular quote, but if you go to our website, we actually have a case study around this. And I think this specific statistic that we were able to pull out when we jumped into the analytics was that using the chatbots, they were able to reduce the email volume that they were getting of these repetitive admissions emails by around 66%. And that really gives you some perspective into how repetitive a lot of these queries are and how basic a lot of these queries are. I mean, honestly, like, we find this across industries again, but the vast majority of queries that businesses get, the vast majority of queries that organizations get from their customers that are preventing them from taking the next step are very basic queries that really don't require a human being to answer. Now, the remaining 34% of queries that they still need emails to address, they might be more complex queries that actually need an admissions counselor's expertise to respond to. They might be very niche queries that a chatbot can't really handle. But when you think about it, that's a significant reduction in the workload of the admissions counselor, and that's a significant reduction in the that's a significant reduction in the time that students are waiting overall when you look at the entire picture of the admissions workflow of the Mirage School of Business, which at the end of the day is what we're all trying to achieve. And it's what helps us get more enrollments at the end of our funnel. Now, I think that's enough of us talking on the, actually, completely forgot that we are going to be telling you about where these chatbots can be deployed. It's been some time since I've been on these webinars before, so I'm a little out of practice, a little rusty. But yeah, Levi is going to talk to us a little bit about where these chatbots can be deployed. And then we're actually going to see, after that, we're actually going to see where an example of one of these chatbots deployed onto an actual website. We're actually going to look at the UCI example.
Yeah, and just a couple notes about UCI. I actually dropped the case study in the chat. So if you'd like to go open that link to read later, it's in the chat. You can check out that case study in more detail. And yeah, and another thing to mention on that, even those more advanced, nuanced queries, when they come through, they will actually come through the chatbot. So let's talk about that. If it doesn't answer their question, they're like, oh, I have this doesn't answer my question. They can submit that question in a very consistent and structured report that is then sent to the admission counselor from the chatbot itself, so they can see how they interacted with the chatbot and then their specific question for that admissions counselor in a nice structured report. So it makes responding to that much easier. They can see exactly what's going on. The subject line may be very specifically tailored to that situation too. So the admission counselor at a glance already can orientate themselves and respond as quick as possible to that particular prospective student's needs. I actually did this with government. I automated an entire agency's customer service request through chatbots, and it fundamentally changed the entire experience for customers. It was a game changer for them and saved somewhere around $2.5 million in customer support. So it was a big deal for them, and it works like a charm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. And now we'll talk about how they can actually be deployed, because there's quite a few different ways they can be deployed, and each one has their own use cases or and really pros and cons to it. The website widget is one of the most common. So that is a floating widget on your landing page or your website that can be opened by the user if they choose to open the chat. It comes with a little call out message that kind of attracts their attention to what they would use that widget for. Additionally, when they interact on your website, clicking buttons, links, images, whatever it may be, can actually link to that chatbot and open that widget up too, and from a curated position in the conversation. So if they're interested in a specific, say you have 3 programs available on a page, and they click learn more on the top one, the chatbot can open and start talking to them about that program specifically to answer their questions. And it gives that much higher level of personalization. It definitely beats out taking somebody to a new page. That is a break-in experience. We've accepted it. I don't know why we've accepted it, but we've accepted it for decades with the internet. And nobody's really said, hey, why are we taking people off page? Why are we taking them to a new page, breaking the experience, creating a load time when we could be engaging them right then and there, where their, again, intent is highest. So that is really a superpower of the website widget, is being able to engage through that website and interact with those folks, very relevant right in the moment that they are interested in it.
And really quick,
just like
another point to note is that if your website structure does have multiple pages for multiple different programs, another aspect of these website widgets that makes them powerful is that you can have, since they're injected at the page level, you can have a different website widget for each program that you have. So you can have a customized chat flow for each of the different pages that you have that you might be running ads on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely as you get more granular with that personalization, you're just going to see your conversions jump up, giving that great experience, very personalized, very relevant. The next deployment is conversational landing pages. So this is kind of an interesting use case. TARS is actually the first one to do this. So TARS was the leader in the industry with conversational landing pages. Above all else, we were the ones that came up with that idea. And what it is instead of having a landing page or a website, instead all you have is the chatbot. Center of the page. If they're on desktop, they have a page background and that chatbot centered. It's the same experience whether you're on mobile to desktop, and it just engages the user through conversation. So what this looks like compared to a traditional landing page is the key to it is it's always asking for interaction from the user, versus a landing page can be passively scanned and you can read through it and scroll without doing anything. But with a chatbot, you're going to be engaging with it from the very start to the very end. What that means is, well, just like that, they're engaged, right? That Facebook Messenger can wait because they're actually actively doing something on your page and being responded to and being part of that experience. So they're great for post-click experiences, whether that's through your ads, whether that's through an email, whatever channel that you're trying to get somebody to take action afterwards, you can give them hyper-personalized, extremely relevant, and extremely focused experiences through conversational landing pages.
Yeah. And I think that like a good way to think about it is you're cutting out the middleman, because right now what's happening is someone's clicking on your ad, they're landing on a page for one of your programs. They skim through the page and then they fill out a form so that what can happen after that form, so that you can engage them in a conversation, whether that's your admissions counselor talking to them, whether that's you sending them emails in some way, shape, or form. After they go through the process of landing on your page, skimming through it, or even if they click on the chatbot widget, they're landing on your page, they're skimming through it, and they're filling out their details so you can have a conversation with them. What we're saying with conversational landing pages is cut out that middleman. Just go straight from the ad into the conversation. And it works for a lot of use cases, a lot of different programs. We've seen it's able to increase that top level conversion rate for people through their ad campaigns.
Yeah, and then and Arnav is probably going to talk a little bit more about this because he has done a lot of work in the WhatsApp space. But we also have a direct to WhatsApp integration. So you can actually build out your chatbots through our builder. It's a workflow builder. It's like building flowcharts, super easy to do. If you can write an email, you can build a chatbot on our platform. And our WhatsApp integration then connects it to a WhatsApp business number so that, and this is really key if you have international students or you are an international university or out in some other country other than the United States. The United States WhatsApp usage is a little low. But once you leave the United States, WhatsApp is massive. It's the number one messaging app. So if you're looking to target international students, or you're outside of the United States and you're in pretty much anywhere else that's going to be using WhatsApp as a number one messaging platform, then you have the ability to actually engage those folks where they're having their conversations with friends and families every day.
Right.
And the experience is we're using the WhatsApp interface, but there's extra stuff to that. With a web chatbot, we cannot target folks with notifications post that conversation or pre that conversation, and also post. You don't really get notifications through a web chatbot, but through a WhatsApp chatbot, you can actually send out targeted campaigns to start conversations with your WhatsApp chatbot. So I'll let Arnav talk a little bit more about that.
Yep.
But
Yep. I mean, I just realized that we actually have the copy on this slide wrong, which we'll fix after the webinar. But I mean, Levi covered a lot of what we're trying to convey with these WhatsApp chatbots. I mean, the real value behind WhatsApp chatbots, you can access a WhatsApp chatbot in much the same way that you access a web-based chatbot. WhatsApp chatbots have a link that drops people instead of onto a web page or opening up a widget. What it does is it takes you into the WhatsApp application where you can start a conversation on WhatsApp with a WhatsApp chatbot that lives on a WhatsApp business number. This might sound super jargony, but we've hosted webinars on this exact topic as well that you can check out. In fact, our last webinar was, I think our last webinar or the webinar before that was about WhatsApp chatbots. But the real value behind WhatsApp chatbots is that the conversation is not transient. The conversation is persistent. And what I mean by that is if someone lands on your page, they click onto a widget that drops them into a WhatsApp chatbot instead of a web-based chatbot, and they say hi to you. Your chatbot, one, can respond to them instantly and engage them in a conversation, just like they would in the web-based chatbot. But say the user, for whatever reason, say the student leaves the conversation. They get distracted by a message that they get from their friends. They maybe have to go and do some chores around the house. They get distracted for whatever reason. They leave the conversation. Using our new WhatsApp campaigns feature and WhatsApp marketing, what you can do is you can send them a targeted notification to sort of remind them, say, hey, you'd started this application. Do you want to maybe complete the application? You'd started inquiring about this. Do you want to maybe learn a little more about the program that we're offering? Maybe a piece of news comes out about a specific program that you are running. Maybe one of the alums of this program has done something really cool. You can share that piece of information with them to bring them back into the conversation and restart the process, so that all of the time, money, and effort, again, that you invested in bringing that person to your page and getting them to click onto your WhatsApp chatbot doesn't go to waste. And the beauty of this is, I mean, we're already doing this with web-based advertising, a little bit with retargeting ads. For example, if someone lands on your page, you have a Facebook pixel on it, and then the ad follows that student around on Facebook when they're scrolling through social media. But with WhatsApp, the beauty of it is it's an owned audience. So once someone says hi to you, you can send them another message after that, without really having to pay for it like you would with a retargeting ad. And like Levi mentioned, with a considerably higher open and CTR, open rate and click-through rate, because or maybe click-through rate isn't the ideal term, a response rate, because as of right now, at the very least, people are opening up their WhatsApp messages when they get them, even if it's from a business, and they are responding to those WhatsApp messages. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're seeing a 40+% response rate on the WhatsApp campaigns that we're running with some of our customers, and a 70% plus open rate, which is something that no retargeting campaign, text marketing campaign, email marketing campaign can compete with. I mean, they're just leagues apart. But those are the three ways you can deploy these chatbots to your existing workflows. We often talk a lot about the value of chatbots, but we don't talk about what it actually looks like, where the rubber meets the road, where the chatbots actually get integrated into your existing workflows. And now those are the three ways you can integrate them into your workflows. And I think the logical next step is to actually show you what this looks like in person. So if you're a student out there in the world, going about your day looking for programs, you click onto an ad, you land onto a page for a program that you like. What does it look like for that chatbot to be there? What does it look like to interact with that chatbot? So like I mentioned earlier, one of our partners, one of our customers is the UCI Paul Mirage School of Business. They offer a number of master's programs, which you can see over here in their programs tab. Masters of Finance, Master of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I think the one we are on right now is the Masters of Science in Business Analytics. Also curious about the Masters of Science in Biotechnology Management, which seems like a cool but niche program to be a part of. Now, on all of these pages, what they have is they have a customized chatbot that lives in the bottom right in a widget like we were talking about. You can see it over here. I can scroll down through the page and the chatbot stays there with this call out over here, asking me, prompting me to start the conversation. It's got a nice little anteater in the chatbot widget. For those of you who don't know, the mascot for the University of California, Irvine is the anteater. So again, this chatbot allows you to add a little bit of personality to the landing page experience, where if you just had a form over here, a contact form, you can't say that the contact form is an anteater. You can say that the chatbot has a personality because it's something that has a conversation with you, but you can't say, oh, fill out this form, which is also UCI anteater. But if I click on the widget, it starts a conversation immediately on the page. So it says, thank you for showing interest in our Masters of Science in Business Analytics program. So as you can see, like Levi was talking about, this chatbot is customized to this specific page. So it's delivering custom information that relates to the specific program that I am looking at as a prospective student. By the end of this program, you'll be offered a wide range of high demand opportunities in data and business analytics. Again, the messaging over here is customized. It is specific to the business analytics program that we are looking at. Are you looking to start a career in business analytics? Let's say yes. Or maybe let's take a bit of a roundabout way of applying for this. Really quick though, before we click on any of these buttons, how much is the program fees and how can I apply? These are the two most common questions that I think all programs get, and they're answering it right off the bat. They're giving people an escape hatch where they can just click on that button and get the quick response to that question that they probably have right off the bat. So maybe actually instead of clicking what are the benefits of the program, we'll click on one of these. Let's click on how can I apply. Over here, let's see what the chatbot says. Let me take you to the right place where you can apply for it. And over here, this is an example of what Levi was talking about, where the chatbot can actually help you navigate the page. So over here, instead of having to scroll through the entire page as a prospective student, where I have to figure out what I have to do to apply to the program, I can say, how can I apply? And the chatbot takes me directly to the place where I need to be to complete my application. So it says, welcome to the UC Irvine Paul Mirage School of Business online application. I can create an application over here. I can sign up and do all of that good stuff. Let me go back to the page really quick so that we can go through some of their other branches, see what that looks like. Let's restart the conversation over here. Click on the widget. Again, super easy, super accessible. We're starting the conversation again. I also really like this GIF that they have over here. It makes it visually stimulating, whereas on a regular page, it's just tends to be static images that don't really give me much as a user. Over here, they have a nice GIF to get the conversation started. We can say, what are the benefits of this program? The program is STEM certified, 36 months of optional practical training. Again, it seems like international students are their target audience with this. So optional practical training is a program specifically made for international students in the US, where you can continue to work for a certain amount of time after your degree is over. on your student visa. And over here, they're saying that it's STEM certified. So if you're in a STEM program, you get to work 36 months. If you're in a non-STEM program, you get to work 12 months. This is a question that international students often have. As an international student myself in the US studying a program, this is the question I had when I was going for my master's program. Is it a STEM certified program or not? It turns out it was not. But this is a question students often have, international students often have, and they are answering it right off the bat over here because they know that that's what students want, and the information is easily accessible. I don't have to dig through all of the text on this page to find that information. It's given to me right here as soon as I ask the question that I have. Our well-rounded curriculum prepares students for careers in data analytics, marketing analytics, or operations analytics. Again, this is a piece of information that a lot of students ask for. It's a question that a lot of students have. What jobs is this going to prepare me for in the future? After I finish this program, what comes next? They're answering it to you right off the bat. They give you some social proof, some experiences of previous students, presumably, if you click over here. And then they have a dedicated career team. Again, as with all programs, people are really just concerned about what they can do after the program is done, because everyone presumably gets a degree so that they can improve their professional or academic career going forward. And then obviously, if you have more questions, you can say, I have other questions. It takes you back to the previous menu where you can continue the conversation. But right off the bat, these are questions that STEM certified program, for example, this is a question I actually asked someone in the program I ended up going for. If I had been on this page, if they had a chatbot on their page that answered that question for me, that's one less question that the program staff has to answer in person to me through a conversation or over email. But that's pretty much it for this demo. I think we're about 4 minutes away from the end time of this webinar, but obviously we'll stay on for a little longer. If you guys have any questions, now is really your opportunity to drop them into the Q&A section or the chat. If you don't have any questions, completely understand. We all have busy lives, and you probably have other stuff to do during your day. But if you do want to reach out to us with any questions that you might have in the future, if you're interested in exploring what a chatbot for your educational program looks like right now, here are our contact details. Again, we're sending the recording for this webinar to you guys after the webinar is done, after Zoom has processed the webinar. So if you rewatch the webinar, if you think of any more questions that come to mind, be sure to use the details on the screen right now to reach out to us. Or alternatively, I believe Levi just shared a couple of resources in the chat. The first one is our other webinars. We're constantly hosting webinars. If you go there right now, you can book your slot for any of the, I think, 4 or 5 webinars that we have planned in the coming months. Or you can book a demo with us, which is the second link that Levi shared. And the way I like to pitch these demos to people is, first of all, they're completely free. Obviously, we're not going to charge you for a demo, but think of it as a personalized webinar where you jump onto a call with one of our chatbot specialists. And that chatbot specialist is essentially going to walk you through a lot of what I walked you through today, but they're going to do it specific to your institution. So we will actually go through the process of researching your institution when you share your institution's URL with us. We might even build a demo chatbot for you to show you what it looks like. And we'll talk you through the specific benefits and the specific value add that we can offer to your institution for your specific admissions workflow, because we obviously know that every institution has unique requirements, has a unique workflow, and we don't believe in offering one size fits all solutions for you guys. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, be sure to book a demo. Again, the link is in the chat. But yeah, with that, we'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if you guys have any questions. If not, we'll end this webinar and send you the recording as soon as we can.
And yeah, feel free to ask any questions about really anything. It doesn't have to be specifically about this topic. If you're just curious about chatbots in general,
right?
Feel free to drop any question. I'm happy to answer.
And if you joined this webinar early, you'll know that Levi and I were having an interesting conversation about mug styles. Specifically, we're trying to figure out what you call this type of mug, and the value of the metric system versus the imperial system of measurement. So if you have questions about that as well, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A section.
Yeah. And while we wait, because everybody's furiously typing, I'm sure. While we wait, a couple interesting notes. So I was reached out to by a local, actually the university that I graduated from, Montana State University, um, from a director in that particular in one of the departments that was dealing with, and I mentioned this a little bit when I talked a little bit more about it. They run a science decathlon um, uh, event, and the problem with it is they had a page, right? They had the information on the page, but nobody was really consuming that. And so then they made the copy really really concise and very limited, and then everybody had questions anyways. So they felt like they were caught in this back and forth where they could never win. And the director specifically, because her team was running a lot of other things, she had the emails coming to her. She's like, I just cannot do my job and answer these emails. I just cannot do it, and I cannot put this on my staff either. I don't know what to do. So these are common, right? Common. This is just one director of a department dealing with one particular event that they're putting on, and just it was just crushing their ability to respond to these the inquiries that were coming in and deal with them. So this is really what we're talking about. If you're looking to reduce that, chatbots are the way. This is definitely going to help you. Our example is of just one chatbot for one program. But you can really think about these chatbots as being, like I mentioned before, flow charts, right? We're building flow charts. They can get incredibly complex and do a lot of different things for you. We're talking about top of funnel here, but there's even more. They could actually assist those students all the way through their admissions to acceptance, to even getting them orientated to your actual school and processes as well. So it really goes from where we're at to the whole life cycle of that student's experience with your university,
Right.
and what may come, or convincing them to come back for a master's program if they're an undergraduate. You can sell that entire life cycle to them and keep it consistent through through chatbots.
Right. Absolutely. And maybe we'll even host webinars about those further down the funnel use cases of chatbots in the admissions process in the coming months, if that's the sort of thing that people are interested in. But it looks like we don't really have any questions today, which means that we did our jobs well. We're so good at presenting that you guys have the complete picture. You don't have any questions for us. Great. Thank you guys for joining us again. It was an absolute pleasure hosting this webinar for you guys. I'll repeat it again, just because we get this question so often. We will send a recording out to you guys after the recording is processed. Zoom just takes a little bit of time to process the recording. Then we have to upload the recording. One thing to note, though, is since we are streaming this live on YouTube, the recording of the webinar will be available almost immediately on YouTube. So if you go to the TARS Chatbot channel on YouTube, just look up TARS Chatbot in your YouTube search bar. You should be able to go to our channel and check out the recording almost immediately on YouTube. In fact, let me go ahead and share the YouTube link with you guys in the chat in case, for whatever reason, you want to check out the webinar. Maybe you want to share it with someone. Instead of clicking chat, I stopped sharing my video. So I've dropped the YouTube link in the chat. Oh, I didn't share it with all attendees. Okay, I dropped the YouTube link in the chat. You can use that link, share it with whoever you want immediately, and they should be able to see the recording of this webinar. Maybe you want to share it with someone on your team who you think this could benefit. But again, thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Levi, for co-hosting with me at the
Absolutely.
something we decided at the last minute. But I think it was a great session.